Battle Through the Heavens, Grand World. Chapter 76. Zhou Yuan. The streets of West Star City were connected in all directions, and the streets were packed with people. On both sides of the streets, various shops were lined up neatly, and they were selling a dazzling variety of goods. Tisk tisk, it's really bustling. Walking on the street and looking at the bustling scene around him, Xiaoyan couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. The liveliness in the city was like the difference between heaven and earth and the silence in the forest outside. Let's stay here for a day and prepare some things that we need during the cultivation process before setting off. After making up his mind, Xiaoyan's tense mind in the forest had finally relaxed. Seeing the restaurant not far away, Xiaoyan walked over without hesitation. Since he had decided to stay for a day, he would satisfy his desire to eat first. After entering the restaurant, the waiter, who was a little unhappy when he saw Xiaoyan's tattered clothes, took out several hundred monarch crystals and immediately smiled. He attentively brought Xiaoyan to a seat near the window on the top floor, where he could see everything on the street clearly. After ordering a pot of wine and some dishes, Xiaoyan looked at the bustling crowd below. While he was drinking, a somewhat unrestrained voice was suddenly heard. "Brother, it's a bit lonely to drink alone here. Why don't you let me invite some maids to drink with you?" The person who came sat across Xiaoyan and said with a smile. Xiaoyan frowned and looked up. Opposite him was a young man dressed in blue. He had a handsome face and looked somewhat heroic. There was a trace of an unrestrained smile at the corner of his mouth, but there was a familiar look in his eyes. When Xiaoyan was in Fighting Key Continent, he could often sense that feeling in the eyes of some old monsters who had lived for countless years, such as the Pill Tower's old ancestor, Zhu Kun, Jiyu Yuan, and others. "I'm not interested. If you need it, I do have some spare money. I can let you have some fun." Xiaoyan drank the wine in his cup and smiled. The young man in front of him did not give him any disgust. Instead, he gave him an unruly feeling. Ha ha ha. When the young man heard this, he laughed in a carefree manner, totally ignoring the gazes of the surrounding guests. "No need to trouble, brother. No matter how poor I am, I will not find those maids to get drunk." The youth's strange gaze swept across Xiaoyan. After which, he also laughed lightly. He picked up Xiaoyan's wine jar and poured himself a cup. He looked out the window with a smile on his face. When Xiaoyan saw this, he didn't say anything. He poured himself a cup of wine and then started to eat his own food. "I'm Zhou Yuan. May I know your name, brother?" The young man looked at the street view outside the window for a while, then turned around and drank the wine in his cup. He looked at Xiaoyan and said with a smile, "I, Xiaoyan." Xiaoyan said lightly as he ate. The young man named Zhou Yuan nodded and stared at Xiaoyan for a while. When the latter frowned and looked up, Zhou Yuan looked away and looked out the window again. "May I know what business you have with me, brother Zhou?" Xiaoyan placed his chopsticks on the table and looked straight at Zhou Yuan. He said in a low voice, "This guy came from an unknown place. Judging from his performance just now, he didn't seem to be an enemy. Besides, he had just entered the West Star City and had never had any conflicts with anyone. Hee. With Mr. Xiao's experience as a fighting monarch, I can't believe he's still so impatient." Zhou Yuan looked directly into Xiaoyan's eyes and said in a calm tone, "Fighting monarch." Xiaoyan was startled. Then, as if he had thought of something, he gave Zhou Yuan a deep look and said, "Brother Zhou is also a fighting monarch that was upgraded in the lower realm." When Zhou Yuan heard this, he smiled and said, "Since Mr. Xiao said so, I think it must be a fighting monarch that broke through to the next realm." "What? How did you find out?" Xiaoyan had also calmed down at this moment. He looked into Zhou Yuan's eyes and said in a deep voice, "It's very simple. I can feel the sovereign aura in your body. This kind of feeling is not something that an ordinary person can imitate. The person who possesses it is either the Mount Tai and Big Dipper of the great world. They were either the fighting monarchs of the lower realms that had been constantly tempered and contained themselves." Looking at Mr. Xiao's actions, he thought for a moment. "It's the latter. Furthermore, as a top expert of the pyramid in the lower realm, I have seen many beautiful women. Who would be interested in rouge powder? Am I right, Mr. Xiao?" Brother Zhou's eyes are really sharp. "I admire you." Xiaoyan smiled noncommittally and said faintly. Zhou Yuan did not mind. He looked out the window and seemed to talk to himself. "I think Mr. Xiao has the same feeling. He has been in a high position in the lower realm for a long time. It's hard for him to accept it in such a short period of time. From the strongest to the weakest. The gap between them is like heaven and hell. After listening to Zhou Yuan's words, Xiao Yan felt slightly shocked in his heart, as if he shared the same feeling. When I first came here, I was also full of confidence. I wanted to make my own glory once again, but my strength was too weak. I had no choice but to join a sect in the star field, but I think Mr. Xiao can also experience it. Our sect in the lower realm is either the supreme elder or the ancestor of our sect. Here, we are the lowest ranked disciples. Even though I have the heart to endure, the pride of the fighting monarch has driven me to the brink of insanity. Xiao Yan raised his head at this moment and quietly listened to Zhou Yuan talking to himself. His heart showed a trace of sympathy. Although he had almost entered Elder Yi's illusion realm from the very beginning, his bitter cultivation in the forest domain had driven him crazy. After advancing to the Emperor realm, I couldn't bear it anymore. So, I took advantage of the time when I was going out for a trial and secretly escaped. After a few twists and turns, I arrived at the forest domain. Although my life in the West Star City was a little messy, I was very comfortable and didn't need to be angry with those bastards in the sect. As he spoke, Zhou Yuan also turned his head with a smile. He looked at Xiao Yan and said, I have been here for nearly 10 years. Although I don't have many friends, I still have some connections. After that, Zhou Yuan's gaze swept across the surroundings and suddenly said in a low voice. Now, I have a risky method to seek wealth. Mr. Xiao, do you dare to try it? If I succeed, I can easily obtain 1,000,000 monarch crystals. Xiao Yan's heart moved when he heard this, but he still said calmly, since Brother Zhou has already said that he has some connections in the West Star City. Why did you come looking for me for such a good thing? Zhou Yuan chuckled and said, we are all people who have experienced great storms in the lower realm. Then, I will be frank with you. One reason is because I know the benefits that Mr. Xiao needs. Since Mr. Xiao has come from the lower realm, I think the monarch crystal is the most important thing. If I succeed in this task, there will be a lot of monarch crystals. Seeing Xiao Yan nod his head, Zhou Yuan continued, this is the second point. Looking at Mr. Xiao's appearance, he must also be alone. This kind of person must have killed many people in the lower realm. He must have the courage to do so. He wouldn't be a burden. 3. What I need is not monarch crystals. I need something else. It's different from Mr. Xiao's interests. It just so happens to be a good thing. Xiao Yan smiled when he heard this, and said in a low voice, Brother Zhou's words are really straightforward. Xiao Yan is also not a vague person. Tell me, what news do you have, Brother Zhou? Zhou Yuan wasn't surprised at all when he heard that. It was as if he knew that Xiao Yan would agree. Immediately, he said in a low voice, according to what I know, the county princess of Wuling Prefecture, Deyang Prefecture, dug out many treasures and forest domains from the remains of an expert in forest domain. Those relatively precious things were brought back by the expert first. Only some precious ores and millions of monarch crystals are left. Those ores seem to be materials used to create formations. Due to their violent nature, they can't be stored in storage rings, so they can only be transported. Hence, they disguised themselves and planned to disguise as bodyguards to rush back to Deyang County. In order to not attract attention, they announced to the public that they wanted to escort a batch of storage rings made ores. Although the storage rings making ores were precious, it would not attract the attention of many powerhouses. Hence, starting from yesterday, the requirements are to be at the sovereign master level. Why is it a sovereign master? Xiao Yan was puzzled. In order to be safe, the more powerful the bodyguard was, the better. Because their strength is at the monarch spirit, and a sovereign master is the strongest combat strength they can control. Zhou Yuan explained in a low voice, what I need is the monarch arts monarch skill in the leader's storage ring. The 1,000,000 monarch crystals that Mr. Xiao needs are also among them. I know that the value of the monarch arts is far greater than the 1,000,000 monarch crystals. Therefore, the 10 spirit weapons that they obtained from the ruins will all belong to Mr. Xiao. What do you think? Monarch arts. Xiao Yan's heart trembled, but he immediately suppressed the feeling of being moved. He looked at Zhou Yuan with a fervent gaze. He said in a low voice, Brother Zhou and I are not the only bodyguards that we have recruited. Let's take all our belongings. What do you intend to use to compensate the remaining people? Compensate. Zhou Yuan smiled playfully and said softly, about that, Mr. Xiao is thinking too much. Do you think there will be no powerful people who will come to rob you along the way? When that time comes, they will all die. What kind of compensation do we need? Right, Mr. Xiao. Xiaoyan's eyes focused. He looked at Zhou Yuan, who was looking at him with burning eyes. Suddenly, he laughed lightly and said, Brother Zhou's words make sense. Chapter end. Chapter 77. Let's go. This is their information. The name of the old man is Suo Quan, and his strength is about 8 monarch spirit warriors. He also has 4 guards with him, and they are all monarch spirit level warriors. Take a look. After Xiao Yan and Zhou Yuan stayed in the restaurant for a while, the two of them tacitly agreed to stay in this restaurant. After that, the two of them stayed in their respective rooms quietly. Both of their shocking actions caused them to nod their heads silently. Zhou Yuan was worried that Xiao Yan would leak the news, while Xiao Yan was worried that Zhou Yuan might collude with someone else. As a result, the two of them didn't have any knot in their hearts. In the night, Zhou Yuan knocked on the door and entered Xiao Yan's room. As soon as he entered, he handed Xiao Yan a few pages of information and told Xiao Yan everything he knew. Suo Quan has recruited 20 guards this time. Most of them will be kept in the dark, but I am sure. Therefore, these people are also our opponents. Furthermore, if my guess is correct, the only information they have is the 1 million monarch crystals, and they don't know anything about the monarch arts. Therefore, we have to be even more careful, we can't let anyone else see through it. Of course, I can't guarantee that none of the people who came to rob us will go after the monarch arts. If it's just the monarch crystal, then the enemy's strength might be ordinary. But if the monarch arts is involved, then it will be fun. Perhaps even the emperor, or even the monarch emperor will come out. Speaking up to this point, Zhou Yuan smiled helplessly. If that really happened, let alone seizing the monarch arts, it would be good enough for us to keep our lives. Xiao Yan smiled bitterly when he heard this. An expert of that level was indeed not someone they could fight against at the moment. We will depart from West Star City. After passing through the teleportation point, we will arrive at Qingshan City in Fengdu County of Wuning Prefecture. Qingshan City was still 7 cities away from the center of Deyang County. As expected, when we reach the 4th city, the people of Deyang County will come to guard us. So, from Green Mountain City to the 4th city. Between Xiaohua City, it's us. It is also the time for all the enemies to make their move. After listening to Zhou Yuan's analysis carefully, Xiao Yan couldn't help but glance at the former. Such meticulous thoughts and analysis. It would be sad if such a person remembered him. My strength is 8 Dao Sovereign Masters. Mr. Xiao, you are a 6 Dao Sovereign Master. Since they are all fighting monarchs that have broken through to the next realm, it's common for them to fight those who are stronger than themselves. Let's talk about this. With my full strength, I should be able to fight 3 monarch spirit without losing. What about you, Mr. Xiao? Xiao Yan hesitated for a moment and said, I have only broken through to the 6 Dao Sovereign Master realm a few days ago, but I think I should be able to fight 1 or 2 ordinary monarch spirit warriors. Haha, good. This is also one of the reasons why I asked Mr. Xiao for help. Any fighting monarch that we can use to break through to the next realm, even if it's a sovereign master, it can still challenge a monarch spirit. As for a sovereign master from a great world, it's impossible for him to challenge a monarch spirit with his strength, except for a few monstrous geniuses. Zhou Yuan chuckled and said. When Xiao Yan saw this, he felt a sense of relief in his heart, but even so, he was still wary of Zhou Yuan. This guy's mind was really nimble and scary, so it was better to be on guard against him. With our strength, we can kill Suo Quan in the chaos when the time comes. Take his storage ring and leave immediately. Those ores, although they are precious, they aren't things that we should be thinking about. After the matter is settled, I'll take the monarch arts monarch skill. Those monarch crystals, no matter how many there are, I won't take anything from them. All of them will belong to Mr. Xiao, of course. Right now, there are nearly 400,000 spirit weapons in the auction house. There was still a price but no market. It just so happened that I had a handy spirit weapon. There is no need for that. Just give it all to Mr. Xiao, Zhou Yuan said as he prepared to get up and leave. Brother Zhou is really confident. I admire your confidence. Xiao Yan stood up and said with a smile. In his heart, he once again looked up at Zhou Yuan. Haha, if I didn't have this much confidence, I would have been eaten by someone in West Star City long ago. Laughing loudly, Zhou Yuan cupped his hands and left. Xiao Yan closed the door and leaned against the door. He looked at the street outside the window, which was still brightly lit. His eyes sparkled with a bright light, and he only smiled after a long time. He, Zhou Yuan, had traveled in the lower realm and had rich experiences. However, he, Xiao Yan, was not bad either. The next morning, Zhou Yuan brought Xiao Yan to a luxurious courtyard in the western part of West Star City. There were almost 10 people in the garden. When they heard someone come in, most of them only looked up. 2 of them greeted Zhou Yuan warmly, obviously very familiar with the former. Zhou Yuan responded with a smile. He brought Xiao Yan to a closed house and respectfully said, Master Suo Quan, Zhou Yuan has come to report. The brother I recommended to you the day before has also come. Not long after he finished speaking, the door opened with a creak. An old man with a chubby body, white hair, and a kind face walked out. He smiled and nodded at Zhou Yuan, then looked at Xiao Yan. Hee, little guy, Zhou Yuan said that although your strength is weak, you have extraordinary talent and can jump ranks to fight. Since that's the case, I'll leave the rest of the journey to you. After saying that, Suo Quan cupped his hands towards Xiao Yan with a smile on his face. Xiao Yan hastily returned the greeting. Then, he looked at Zhou Yuan who was standing at the side, feeling even more surprised in his heart. This guy had already expected this the day before yesterday. After Suo Quan entered the room, Xiao Yan couldn't help but ask, Brother Zhou, you promised him that you would find a fighting monarch of lower realm to help him advance to the sovereign master realm the day before yesterday. How is that possible? I only said it casually that day. I didn't expect that the old man would take it seriously. Fortunately, I met you, Mr. Xiao, otherwise, I would have to find those unreliable brothers. Also, don't look at that old man Suo Quan, who is always smiling. If they really were to fight, they would definitely show no mercy. Right, the thing we want is placed in the storage ring on his finger. Zhou Yuan sneered. His voice became softer and softer, almost inaudible. After sitting down in the garden, Zhou Yuan also introduced the 2 people who greeted Xiao Yan when they first arrived. One of them had a strong body, and his voice was like thunder. His strength was 7 Dao Sovereign Master, and his name was Wu Sen. The other person had a medium build and a pretty face. He looked like a young master from a rich family, and his strength was 8 Dao Sovereign Master. His name was Liu Kai. After about 15 minutes, all 20 people had finally arrived. At this moment, the tightly shut door was also opened. Suo Quan, who had a smile on his face, was the first to walk out. Behind him were 4 big men in the same clothes, following Suo Quan closely. Haha, everyone is here. Thank you, everyone. Don't worry, if the ore is safely sent to Deyong County, I will definitely ask the princess to thank you all. Suo Quan first cupped his hands at the crowd. After which, he waved his hand, and a guard behind him took a few steps forward. With a flash of light in his hand, 20 identical sets of clothes appeared on the stone platform. Everyone, don't be surprised. Something unexpected might happen along the way. We aren't familiar with each other, so if we put on the same clothes, at least we won't attack our own people during the chaotic battle. Everyone nodded and picked up their clothes to put on. Everyone, thank you for your trouble. Since everyone is willing to come, you will know my name. I will not say any more nonsense. However, if these ores are safely delivered to the prefecture, given Princess Delyong's Peak of Monarch Emperor cultivation base, she will definitely reward you. Therefore, I hope that all of you will do your best to help me along the way. After vaguely threatening everyone, Suo Quan did not say anything else. He waved his hand, and 2 guards arrived in the courtyard and drove 2 large carriages. They were pulled by 2 low-grade spirit beasts, and the carriages were covered with a thick layer of tarpaulin, which contained the so-called ores. Alright, now, 5 people were in front, 7 were behind, and the remaining 8 were on either side, 4 on each side. Let's go. Suo Quan stood in the middle of the 2 carriages, guarded by 4 guards, and gave the order in an orderly manner. Everyone hurriedly followed Suo Quan's orders and stood in their positions. Then, they walked out under Suo Quan's command. Zhou Yuan had already pulled Xiao Yan to the right side of the carriage. On the right side of the carriage were Wu Sen and Liu Kai. Xiao Yan walked to the third position and turned his head to look at the expressionless Wu Sen. His heart was on full alert. He had a vague feeling that this trip as a guard was definitely not simple. Chapter end. Chapter 78. Enemies that kept appearing. A group of more than 20 people walked towards the east of West Star City in a grandiose manner, attracting a lot of attention on the street. However, no one was surprised. A few days ago, Suo Quan had released the news of recruitment. Now that such a huge group had appeared, no one had any doubts about it. The transportation array of West Star City was located on a plain in the east side of the city. As one of the most important transportation hub in West Star County, there would naturally be an army stationed there. The Tianmu Prefecture in Xixing County was not the same as the Wuning Prefecture. The two prefectures were adjacent to each other. There were still several small cities and a vast sea of trees between the two prefectures. If one did not use the transportation array, it would take at least 3 months to travel. As for the transportation array, it would save them all this time. In order to lighten the atmosphere, Suo Quan spoke frankly. He told Xiao Yan everything he knew. Although these things were useless to most people, they were very interesting to Xiao Yan. The so-called transportation array was a kind of formation. This kind of formation could only be created by formation masters. Formation masters were an existence that was even rarer than alchemists. The creation of every formation. Therefore, whether one had sufficient energy and sufficient origin monarch key was the basic standard for array masters. This also caused every array master to have to be a cultivation genius. Similarly, his soul strength must also be far beyond ordinary people. Only in this way could he be able to control the operation and formation of the array agilely. Furthermore, the lowest requirement to become an array master was to have an emperor cultivation base. When Suo Quan said this, Xiao Yan's face couldn't help but tremble. At the same time, he heard the exclamations from the surrounding people. Obviously, everyone was shocked. Their current strength was merely that of an emperor master and sovereign master. Above them were monarch spirit, emperor, and monarch emperor. The emperor cultivation above the monarch emperor was already an overlord of a region, but this kind of strength was actually the prerequisite to becoming a formation master. Hearing the exclamations of the crowd, Suo Quan's heart seemed to have been satisfied. He proudly nodded his head, sorted out his thoughts, and began to speak like a river. It was precisely because of the scarcity of array masters. They could be said to be the most lucrative profession in the great world. The transportation array could be said to be one of the lowest level of all array formations, but even so, in some large auction houses, the price of a single array formation was at least 500 million monarch crystals, which was comparable to the price of some saint-grade monarch crystals. 500 million monarch crystals. Hearing this, the crowd could no longer calm down. For a moment, they could hear the sound of people inhaling cold air, especially some local sovereign masters who were cultivating alone in the great world. They did not have the natural talent and disposition to advance to the fighting monarch realm in the lower realm, nor did they have the cultivation resources of the local disciples. They could only rely on their own hard work. When they were fighting for hundreds or thousands of monarch crystals, a low-level array formation casually created by those array masters would cost at least 500 million monarch crystals. Although the two of them could not be compared, the difference was indeed quite great. Xiao Yan was also speechless when he heard this. In his heart, he also had some yearning and curiosity towards that so-called array master. Zhou Yuan, who was in front of him, didn't show any change in expression when he heard Suo Quan talking about the array master. When he heard the words saint-grade monarch skill coming out of Suo Quan's mouth, a rare glint flashed in Zhou Yuan's eyes. He looked at Suo Quan, who was still talking without leaving any trace. The corner of his mouth revealed a trace of a cold smile that no one noticed. About half a day later, the group finally walked out of the bustling area and came to a vast plain. Although there weren't as many people as in the city, compared to the city, there was more order here. The city guards that maintained order could be seen everywhere. Everyone's strength had reached the level of an emperor master. Wearing black armor, their cold eyes swept back and forth between the crowds. Under Suo Quan's command, everyone came to the transportation array, which was used to transport large groups. While Suo Quan was paying the fee, Xiao Yan, like the others, looked around curiously. There were a total of 5 transportation array on this plane. 4 of them were specially used to teleport single persons. Each transportation array was guarded by a powerful leader of city guards. Around them were nearly 10 fully armed men from city guards who needed to be teleported. After Suo Quan paid the 80,000 monarch crystals as teleportation fee, 2 middle-aged men in gray robes who had been standing beside the city guards came forward and said something to Suo Quan. Suo Quan's facial expression changed when he heard this, but in the end, he had no choice but to agree. Turning around, Suo Quan said in a deep voice, "These 2 are the guest elders of the Lei clan of West Star City. Due to some messy matters, we need everyone to cooperate with us." Suo Quan's tone was also very unfriendly. Anyone could hear the anger in his voice. When the 2 middle-aged men heard this, they were also burning with anger. However, their strength was only at the second monarch spirit, and they were fighting seriously around the transportation array. Therefore, the 2 of them could only look at Suo Quan hatefully. After that, each of them held a transparent bead in their hands and swept it across the crowd. Lei Clan. When Xiao Yan heard that these 2 men were from the Lei Clan in West Star City, he couldn't help but feel surprised. His eyes sparkled, and he couldn't figure out why the people from the Lei Clan were waiting here. Could it be Lei Te? While Xiao Yan was feeling puzzled, the gray-clothed middle-aged man had already passed by Xiao Yan with the shadow pearl in his hand. When he saw the middle-aged man behind him, Xiao Yan frowned. Could it be that he was being paranoid? These watchdogs are relying on the Lei clan to back them up. They are trying to use the Lei clan to intimidate us. Zhou Yuan, who was at the front, turned around and sneered. They think they are worth some weight, but among the upper echelons of the Lei family, they are nothing. It seems like Brother Zhou also held a high position in the lower realm. Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice. Zhou Yuan could not help but feel proud when he heard this and said, "I am not boasting. I am very famous in our continent. That sect of ours was about to fall, and in the end, I was the one who turned the tide and supported it to the throne of the number 1 sect in our continent." He sighed. Zhou Yuan smiled helplessly. But, saying these things in front of Mr. Xiao doesn't give you any sense of accomplishment. The one who can become a fighting monarch isn't a proud son of heaven in the lower realm. Just as Xiao Yan was laughing and not saying anything, Zhou Yuan glanced at the 2 men who had put away the shadow pearl and returned to the transportation array. He said in a low voice, "I heard that the Lei clan has been offering a high price for the legendary monarch flames and the whereabouts of the 3,000 lightning monarch flames. I guess this time, they are only doing this for the 3,000 lightning monarch flames." Bang! Zhou Yuan's words resounded in Xiaoyan's mind like a clap of thunder. Xiaoyan's expression changed slightly, and then returned to normal. "I finally understand why that old bastard Rek gave in the martial arena. It turns out that he found my 3,000 lightning monarch flames and then asked Lei Te to come here and report to me. It really is like this." The group slowly walked into the transportation array. Xiao Yan coldly looked at the 2 gray-robed middle-aged men. Then, he raised his head and looked at the array that had already begun to slowly operate. He couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. He then remembered why Lei Te wasn't here. It would be more convenient for him to identify him. "I'm getting more and more confused," Xiao Yan softly muttered. Suddenly, he felt a flash in front of his eyes. Immediately, an endless void appeared in front of his eyes. Boundless pressure came one after another. Before Xiao Yan could react, the scene in front of him flashed. A strong light shot out and forced Xiao Yan to close his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, the scenery in front of him had completely changed. Looking at the unfamiliar surroundings and listening to the noisy human language, Xiao Yan let out a sigh of relief. "Is this Wuning Prefecture? Alright, let's go to Azure Mountain City to recuperate." Suo Quan, who appeared at the same time, coughed lightly and gave the order. The motorcade then headed in the direction of Green Mountain City. Less than an hour after Xiao Yan and the others left, another strong light flashed from the transportation array. After that, nearly 20 people appeared. The middle-aged man at the front was tall and thin. He looked at the disappearing motorcade with a pair of gloomy eyes. He said softly, "They should have gone to Qingshan City to rest first. If that's the case, Let's go rest too. When they leave Qingshan City, we can make our move now. Those 3 million monarch crystals and 14 spirit weapons. Hee, it really makes me envious. Everyone behind him nodded their heads. After that, they followed the middle-aged man and rushed in the direction of Green Mountain City. After the middle-aged man and the others left for a short while, the transportation array once again flashed with a strong light. When the person in charge of this place saw the group of people, he was immediately shocked. He hurriedly stepped forward and said respectfully, "I am Xu Zheng, the leader of the city guards of Green Mountain City. Greetings, the city lord of West Star City and all the lords." The city lord of West Star City, who was wearing a purple brocade robe and had a head full of silver hair, smiled and said, "Commander Xu, you are too polite. I have come to Wuning Prefecture to discuss an important matter with the city lord of Cloud Rock City. I will not disturb the city lord of Green Mountain City." As he spoke, a bright light flashed in Wu Zishan's hand, and an axe-shaped spirit weapon appeared in his hand. "Take this mighty spiritual axe as a meeting gift. I have come this time to hide from the princess of West Star County. I have left my post without permission. Commander Xu, you must keep this a secret for me," Wu Zishan said with a kind smile. That's right, City Lord, you are worrying too much. I will not leak any information." Xu Zheng received the giant spiritual axe in a flattered manner and said solemnly, "All right, there are too many people here. I won't stay any longer." After saying that, Wu Zishan waved his hand and left with the 7 or 8 people behind him. Seeing Wu Zishan and the others leave, Xu Zheng kept the mighty miracle axe into his storage ring. His eyes were filled with gratitude. What a good city lord. After leaving the transportation array, Wu Zishan said to the people behind him in a cold voice, "All right, according to the original plan, Yan Chong and I will stay with the Union City Lord for 2 days. Li Hong, bring the others and follow Suo Quan. Wait for me. This time, we must obtain that thing." As he spoke, the amiable expression on Wu Zishan's face had long disappeared, replaced by endless ferociousness and greed. Chapter End. Chapter 79. Attack. Qingshan City, as the first city between Tianmu Prefecture and Wuning Prefecture, has an astonishing amount of human traffic and prosperity. Xiao Yan and the others walked for nearly half a day before dragging their somewhat tired bodies into Green Mountain City. The bustling scene that greeted their faces caused them to be stunned for a moment. Haha, don't look at the name Green Mountain City, but its prosperity isn't any weaker than West Star City's. Suo Quan couldn't help but speak when he saw the shocked expressions on their faces. Zhou Yuan, who was walking in front of Xiao Yan, wiped the sweat on his forehead and said softly. He muttered, "That old man is really talkative." In less than half a day's journey, Suo Quan started to talk about the interesting stories of Wuning Prefecture. Some people, such as Xiao Yan, were very interested in hearing it, but it was torture for someone like Zhou Yuan who had something on his mind. Hearing Zhou Yuan's muttering, Xiao Yan smiled noncommittally. Along the way, Suo Quan had been talking nonsense from all over the world, which made him understand a lot of things. After entering the city, everyone followed Suo Quan's arrangement and moved into an extremely luxurious restaurant. Xiao Yan and the other 20 people were arranged to stay in 4 big rooms. Everyone knew that this was to supervise each other. Zhou Yuan and Xiao Yan were also assigned to supervise each other. There was also Wu Sen, Liu Kai, and a short-haired young man who had just spoken. "Everyone, have a good rest. We will depart tomorrow morning. We will be relying on you all at that time." After saying that, Suo Quan led the 4 guards into his room. After rushing for half a day, everyone was a little tired, so after saying a few words, some of them went to eat, and some went to cultivate. Zhou Yuan pulled Xiao Yan to the restaurant and ordered some food. As they ate, they looked at the different streets outside the window and chatted with each other. After some customers left, Zhou Yuan lowered his voice. He dipped his finger into some wine and started to draw on the table. "I have done my research. If the convoy leaves from the south gate of Green Mountain City, it is possible to directly enter Green Mountain City. After about 10 days of travel, it is possible to cross the Green Mountain and reach the boundary of the next city. If they leave from the west gate, they will follow the trail of Qingshan Mountain. The possibility of this path should be higher, because there will be pedestrians passing by on this path. Some bandits basically won't stop and rob here. Zhou Yuan's thinking was very flexible. With a few simple words, he helped Xiao Yan understand the situation. But it will take close to 20 days to walk on this path. I can't guarantee that Suo Quan will take this path for a certain safety, so we need to prepare two things. When Xiao Yan and Zhou Yuan returned to their room, Liu Kai was standing by the window, quietly looking out the window. When he heard the two of them return, he greeted them and went back to his room. This guy is not simple. He has been bitterly cultivating by himself, and his strength is quite strong. Zhou Yuan looked at Liu Kai's room and couldn't help but praise. Xiao Yan's eyes swept across the window. In a trance, he seemed to see a flash of light. However, under the bright street view of Green Mountain City, it was so unnoticeable. The next morning, the originally clear sky suddenly turned gloomy. Dark clouds rolled in the sky, and a cold wind blew against his face. It was as if dark clouds were pressing down on the city. Look at the sky. It's raining heavily. Suo Quan, who had just walked out of the restaurant, raised his head and looked at the sky. After pondering for a moment, he turned around and returned to his room with the 4 guards. After Xiao Yan and the others waited for a while, Suo Quan and the 4 guards walked out with their bodies covered in black robes. The black robes looked bloated, completely covering their bodies. Suo Quan, whose face was mostly covered by the black robe, waved his hand and walked out without saying a word. Everyone was speechless when they saw this, but none of them said a word and went back to their own business. A moment later, Xiao Yan and the others protected the motorcade. Under Suo Quan's command, they walked towards the south gate. You want to cross Mount Dacheng. It seems like I have underestimated Suo Quan's courage. Along the way, a few people must have died. Zhou Yuan walked next to Xiao Yan and said with a cold smile. Xiao Yan didn't say anything. He looked at Suo Quan, who was protected by 4 guards in the middle, and muttered in his heart. Initially, he wanted to hear some interesting stories about the big world from this guy. Why didn't he say anything? It seemed like he was also concentrating on preparing for the upcoming crisis. Rumble. As expected, before noon, deafening thunder rumbled in the sky, like the roar of a thunder dragon. The sky was immediately covered in dark clouds, and soon after, heavy rain poured down. Suo Quan did not prepare rain equipment for everyone, so they naturally would not be foolish enough to ask for it. Immediately, they released their auras, forming a layer of light barrier around their bodies, isolating the heavy rain from the outside. At this time, everyone had already left Green Mountain City and was about to enter the thousands of miles of Green Mountain when they suddenly encountered a heavy rain. Although they were fine, the 2 spirit beasts that were pulling the oar were screaming, and they refused to take a step forward no matter how hard the 2 guards whipped them. Xiao Yan looked forward. Countless ancient trees were rustling under the strong wind, making his skin turn cold. The continuous heavy rain completely covered his sight. He could not see anything clearly from a few meters away. If he continued to travel in this kind of weather, the consequences of encountering the devil beast's attack would be unimaginable. Suo Quan raised his head and looked ahead. He had a brief discussion with the 4 guards. After that, he nodded, and then a nurse by the name of Luo Ben beside him said in a deep voice, Lord Suo has ordered. I hope that all of you can show your might and excavate a place to avoid the rain on the mountain wall. Ah! When they heard this, everyone was stunned. Then, a bald-headed middle-aged man with a fiery temper shouted, What? What do you take us for to create a shelter for so many people on the mountain wall? Emperor. Or a monarch emperor? Luo Ben said coldly. Among all of you, there must be someone who has a spirit weapon in his hand. He used the spirit weapon to create a cave. I think it won't be a problem for me to rely on all of your sovereign master's strength. Just as the middle-aged man was about to curse, a bright light flashed in Zhou Yuan's hand. A crystal-clear bone sword appeared in his hand. Zhou Yuan smiled and said, Master Suo, even I couldn't bear to use my spirit weapon. Now, I want to use it to create a shelter from the rain. Tell me, how will you compensate me? Hee hee. Suo Quan laughed with a hoarse voice, Everyone, don't blame me. There were some problems with my cultivation last night, and my voice was a little uncomfortable. Brother Zhou was so generous, so naturally he would make up for it. When the time comes, I will definitely do my best to request the Princess of Deyong County to give Brother Zhou a mid-grade spirit weapon. Mid-tier spirit weapon. When they heard Suo Quan's words, everyone was shocked. That item was worth at least 1 million in the auction house. Haha, good. Zhou Yuan laughed loudly, but Xiao Yan, who was standing beside him, could clearly see a trace of ridicule in the former's eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, the bone sword in Zhou Yuan's hand whistled out and aimed at the mountain wall not far away. It carried a ghostly white spiritual light and rushed towards the mountain wall like a meteor chasing after the moon. Bang! The sky full of dust was extinguished by the heavy rain before it could fly up. When the dust scattered, a large hole that could accommodate 2 to 3 people appeared in front of everyone. Seeing what Zhou Yuan did, some of the people who possessed spirit weapons also took out their spirit weapons and bombarded the mountain wall. Xiao Yan stood among the crowd and looked at the 3 or 4 spirit weapons competing for their spirit weapons. He could not help but shake his head helplessly. After thinking for a while, he still didn't take out the blue flame rulers. Even he didn't know what was going on with his blue flame rulers. If 3,000 lightning monarch flames suddenly appeared when he was using them, and someone saw them, he would be looking for trouble. Very quickly, under the combined efforts of these few people, a cave that could accommodate 20 people was formed. Zhou Yuan put away the bone sword and exhaled. He looked at Xiao Yan and said softly, "Mr. Xiao, don't worry, when we will succeed. You can pick any spirit weapon Suo Quan wants. There will definitely be one that you can use." Xiao Yan also smiled and did not say anything. After everyone entered the cave, their protective light shields were removed one after another. Although this thing was ordinary, it still consumed Origin Monarch Key. In this dangerous mountain forest, the more Origin Monarch Key one had, the safer it would be. The rain outside was getting heavier and heavier. Soon, the roars of some devil beasts could not be heard. Only the sound of heavy rain could be heard. Everyone stayed in the cave and had nothing to do. They gathered in 2s and 3s and chatted. Some people wanted to get close to Suo Quan, but they were all mercilessly rejected by the 4 guards. Xiao Yan, who was resting with his eyes closed, suddenly had a thought. Soul energy flowed out from between his eyebrows. In the next moment, Xiao Yan slowly opened his eyes. Facing Zhou Yuan's puzzled eyes, Xiao Yan grinned and said, "It's here." Outside the cave, in the pouring rain, a group of figures dressed in black tight clothes slowly appeared. Chapter end. Chapter 80. The Yellow Sparrow is here. Although it was noon, due to the rolling dark clouds, the sky had long been dyed ink black. Only the thunder and lightning that passed through the sky could illuminate the horizon. Boom! Another thunderous sound resounded through the sky. The glaring lightning instantly lit up this mountain range. Nearly 20 black-clothed people were standing on a small hill not far from the cave where Xiao Yan and the others were hiding from the rain. The heavy rain fell, but the clothes of nearly 20 men in black were not wet at all. The leader of the group was a tall and thin man. He looked up at the lightning and thunder. The sky was as dark as ink, and his eyes flashed with a trace of madness. Hee, such weather. The heavens are really helping me. He sighed and became skinny. The tall man turned his head and said, "We are not the only ones thinking about Suo Quan. We need to end this battle quickly." Yes. Nearly 20 deep and powerful voices were almost inaudible in the heavy rain. Go! Following the low roar of the thin and tall man, nearly 20 figures rushed towards the cave where Xiao Yan and the others were like tigers that had descended the mountain. In the cave, Zhou Yuan was stunned for a moment when he heard Xiao Yan's words. Then, he quickly reacted and looked at the latter in surprise. With a glance, a spiritual light flashed in Zhou Yuan's hand. The crystal-clear bone sword had already appeared in his hand. Almost the moment Zhou Yuan took out the bone sword, one of Suo Quan's guards also let out a low roar, instantly causing the lazy crowd to pay 120% attention. Attention, someone is coming from outside. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone was startled. They immediately stood up, and Suo Quan, who was protected by the 4 guards, also stood up. With a flash of spiritual light in his hand, a heavy saber appeared in his hand. Bang! In the next moment, everyone saw smoke and dust rolling out from the entrance of the cave. Several sharp rocks the size of a human head were whistling as they flew towards the mountain cave. Humph! Seeing a rock flying towards him, Xiao Yan let out a cold snort. He suddenly stretched his palm forward. Just as his palm was about to touch the rock, a red flame suddenly appeared on his palm. The flame swept across, and the rock under his head turned into black ashes and scattered. A rock that was rushing towards Zhou Yuan was swept away by the strange bone sword in Zhou Yuan's hand, and it instantly turned into ashes. The weakest among the people who came here were 5 sovereign masters. Naturally, they were not afraid of this level of attack, and all of them blocked it. Suo Quan casually swung the saber in his hand, sending a rock flying. He looked at the entrance of the cave and spoke in a hoarse voice, "Who are you? Don't you know that this is the convoy under the command of the Princess of Deyong County?" No one answered. They only heard rustling sounds. When the dust in the cave dissipated, they could clearly see the cave through the light of the fire. There were close to 20 men in black in front of the cave. The leader, a tall and thin middle-aged man, looked coldly at Suo Quan, who was covered by the black robe. He sneered and said, "You talk so much nonsense. Obediently hand over the things and I will leave you with an intact corpse." Arrogant. Suo Quan was instantly enraged. The blade in his hand buzzed and a bright light appeared. "Old fool, I will make you beg for death later." The middle-aged man coldly harumphed. A bright light flashed in his hand, and a black shadow shot out like a poisonous snake towards Suo Quan who was in the cave. Ding! Just as the shadow was about to hit Suo Quan, a guard beside him took a quick step forward. The spiritual sword in his hand blocked the attack of the shadow. When the two collided, an ear-splitting crisp sound was heard. "What are you still standing there for? Attack! Kill them!" The guard who blocked the attack of the middle-aged man suddenly let out a furious roar at the people beside him. After which, he and the other two rushed forward at the same time. All the origin monarch ki on his body gushed out. The powerful strength of a monarch spirit had completely erupted. Clearly, he was preparing for the powerful monarch skill. Suo Quan did not charge forward. Instead, he quietly stood at his original spot. The other guards stood beside him and did not participate in the battle. When they heard the furious roar of this guard, everyone seemed to have woken up from a dream. They couldn't help but curse out loud, and then they started attacking the man in black who was charging towards them. The leader is a peak of monarch spirit. The rest of them are basically between 8 Dao Sovereign Master and 3 Dao Monarch Spirit. "Mr. Xiao, let's pretend to defend first and take the opportunity to get rid of Suo Quan." Zhou Yuan, who had seen the strength of the newcomer, quickly warned Xiao Yan. After that, he held the bone sword in his hand and rushed towards the black-clothed man. Xiao Yan quickly glanced at Suo Quan and the guard, who were standing still. A puzzled expression flashed across his heart. Before he could recover from his shock, a sharp monarch skill beam ruthlessly smashed towards him. Xiao Yan was startled in his heart. Without thinking, he used the 9 revolving wind shift to avoid this attack. He calmed his mind and looked over. A man in black, who was at the second monarch spirit, was fighting with a youth from the 8 Dao Sovereign sect. The youth was obviously no match for the man in black. He was forced to retreat, unable to fight back at all. This was the reason why the man in black had the time to shoot a monarch skill beam at Xiao Yan. In order to avoid the rain from the spirit beast that was pulling the carriage, the cave was extremely spacious. Now, there were more than 40 people fighting in a chaotic battle, and it was just enough to accommodate all of them. These guys really know how to pick. While dodging the attacks from the men in black, Xiao Yan quickly looked at the entire situation. Including Zhou Yuan, a few experts had already surrounded the few sovereign master level men in black. If that's the case, after becoming a 6 Dao sovereign master, I haven't fought a monarch spirit level warrior yet. Today is the perfect time to give it a try. Xiao Yan sneered, then he shifted his gaze to the 2 black-clothed sovereign masters. With a flip of his palm, the blue flame ruler appeared in his hand. Without any technique, Xiao Yan moved his body and threw it at the black-clothed man. "You are courting death." A palm sent the young man in front of him flying. The black-clothed man looked at Xiao Yan, who was holding a huge ruler in his hand, and a mocking look flashed across his eyes. With the strength of a mere 6 Dao sovereign master, he dared to confront Xiao Yan head-on. With a sneer, the man in black clenched his fists tightly. A faint light appeared on the surface of his fists as he punched at the blue flame ruler. Even if this fellow's huge ruler was a spirit weapon, with his strength of a 2nd Dao monarch spirit, just the origin monarch ki alone was enough to torture him. Therefore, the man in black didn't pay any attention to it. He threw a punch at the blue flame ruler without any fancy moves. Crack! The moment his fist touched the blue flame ruler, the smile on the man's face froze. In the next moment, the sound of bones breaking could be heard. Before the man in black could react, he felt a flame on the surface of the huge ruler silently enter his body through his bloody meridians. Ah! Before he could scream, the man in black had already vomited blood. Like a falling sandbag, he flew backwards and hit the rock wall. After that, his body powerlessly fell to the ground. In this chaotic scene, the death of a man in black obviously wouldn't attract too much attention. Xiao Yan landed on the ground and looked at the silent man in black. He couldn't help but feel a trace of joy in his heart. Although the latter was careless, with his current strength. With the monarch flame that could suddenly attack in the blue flame ruler, he wouldn't be able to use the monarch flame secret skill. If he counted the monarch flame secret skill and the 8-directional thunder ruler that could help him reach the minor success stage, he would be able to kill any ordinary early monarch spirit warrior. He estimated that he would be able to fight 7 or 8 monarch spirit warriors at the same time. His strength. Finally, there was a huge improvement. While Xiao Yan was sighing with emotion, Suo Quan and the guard who had been watching from behind were shocked when they saw Xiao Yan's performance just now. 1 second Dao monarch spirit was killed so easily. Suo Quan said in a low voice. His voice was filled with disbelief. This guy was brought here by Zhou Yuan, right? It seems like the strength of a 6 Dao sovereign master could easily kill 2 of them. If he used his full strength, I'm afraid he could fight 4 of them. Although he is still within our control, we still have to be careful. Also, that Zhou Yuan doesn't seem to be simple. The guard beside him said softly. Suo Quan nodded his head when he heard this. While the battle in the cave was in full swing, another group of people quietly appeared 100 meters away from the cave. Someone actually attacked us in front of us. Lord Li, do we need to attack? One of the 7 men in black, who was relatively short, stepped forward and whispered to the leader of the group. Of course. The city lord said that we must get that thing. Of course, we can't just watch helplessly as it falls into the hands of others. However, it's still early. When both sides are exhausted, wouldn't it be better for us to be sparrows? Li Hong had his hands behind his back. Through the heavy rain, he seemed to be able to see the scene of both sides fighting 100 meters away. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but reveal a trace of ferociousness. Chapter end. Hi guys, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.